There's something unsettling about a board game that doesn't follow the rules. No dice, no turns, no clear objective. And yet, millions have sat before it, fingers barely touching the planchette, watching, waiting, as it glides across the board. Some believe it speaks with the dead. Others say it's just a trick of the subconscious mind. But regardless of what you believe, one thing is certain. The Ouija board has captivated and terrified generations. It's been blamed for hauntings, exorcisms, even crimes. It sparked religious panic, scientific inquiry, and urban legends. But where did it come from? And more importantly, who or what gave it its name? To understand the origins of the Ouija board, we have to step into a time of loss. The American Civil War during 1861 to 1865 didn't just leave cities in ruin, it left families shattered, desperate for closure. Back then, death wasn't something distant. There were no phone calls to confirm a loved one's passing, no photos, no bodies returned home in coffins, just a name on a list, if you were lucky. And when answers were scarce, people turned to spiritualism. This was a movement that promised something radical, that the dead weren't really gone, that with the right tools, table wraps, automatic writing, and yes, talking boards, you could reach beyond the veil. But here's where things get strange. Talking boards weren't a new idea. Spiritualists had been using them in one form or another for centuries. But the Ouija board? That was something else. Baltimore, 1890. A medium named Helen Peters is sitting with her brother-in-law, Elijah Bond. They've been experimenting with a strange new board, a flat wooden surface with letters, numbers, and a heart-shaped planchette. But there's just one problem. They need a name. So, naturally, they ask the board. The board spells out Ouija. When they ask what it means, it spells good luck. Coincidence? Maybe. But here's the part that makes this even weirder. Peters was wearing a locket with a picture of a woman and the name Ouija written inside. Some historians believe the board just combined the letters, as if it was reading her mind. They took this as a sign and patented the design the next year, making the Ouija board the first and only spirit-talking device officially recognized by the US Patent Office. But the real genius of the Ouija board wasn't in its design. It was in its marketing. Once the patent was secured in 1891, the first Ouija boards hit the market and demand exploded. The Kennard Novelty Company, the original manufacturer, couldn't keep up with production. By the early 1900s, Ouija had spread across Europe and America, becoming a household name. But behind the scenes, business disputes fractured the company. Elijah Bond and Helen Peters faded from the picture, and control of the Ouija board passed to William Fuld, a man who would take its legacy to a whole new level. If you've ever played Monopoly, you've seen how cutthroat the board game industry can be. But William Fuld, he was something else. When he took over the Ouija board business, he turned it from a niche spiritualist tool into a mass-market sensation. His ads called it the magic game. He sold it as a parlor trick, an icebreaker, something fun for families and couples. By the 1920s, the Ouija board was outselling most games in America. Even Norman Rockwell painted it into the mainstream, showing a boy and girl using one on the cover of the Saturday Evening Post. It became a cultural staple, until people started dying. William Fuld was a businessman, not a believer. But in 1927, something eerie happened. One day, while inspecting his factory, Fuld leaned against a rail, and it snapped. He fell from the roof, broke several ribs. Doctors thought he'd make it. But on the way to the hospital, the ambulance hit a bump. One of his broken ribs punctured his heart. His family claimed that before he died, the Ouija board had given him one final message: prepare for big business. As the decades passed, religious practitioners and exorcists began associating the Ouija board with something far darker, while spiritualists saw it as a tool for contacting the departed. Many faith leaders warned of deception, that it was not spirits answering, but something else entirely. The Catholic Church and various Christian denominations labeled it a dangerous portal to demonic forces, and cases of supposed possessions linked to Ouija use made headlines. Movies like The Exorcist in 1973 only fueled the fear, cementing its reputation as an object of the occult rather than a simple game. So, what's really happening when people use a Ouija board? Are spirits moving the planchette, or is it just us? Psychologists have a theory, the Ideomotor effect. Basically, when we focus on a question, our subconscious mind can send tiny muscle movements through our fingers, nudging the planchette without us realizing it. But here's where things get unsettling. Even when people know about the Ideomotor effect, the board still works. Experiments have shown that even blindfolded participants, people who physically can't see the letters, can still spell out coherent answers. If it's just unconscious movements, then why do so many describe messages they couldn't possibly have known? And why do so many stories end the same way, with a board spelling one last warning: goodbye? But even if it's just a trick of the mind, that doesn't change the experience. People have seen things, heard things, felt things they can't explain. And that's the real power of the Ouija board. It doesn't just ask questions. It asks questions about us. What do we believe? What do we fear? And what happens when we stare into the unknown and something stares back? Superstition or science, trick of the mind or window to the beyond. Whatever you believe, the Ouija board is still here, still waiting for someone to ask the next question. Until next time, keep questioning, keep searching beyond the structure of what you know.